Today I'm flying Vietnam Airlines on a 2-hour flight from the island paradise of Phu Quoc to the country's capital Hanoi in their short-haul Airbus A321. Oh, and we also happened to be flying whilst a huge typhoon was hammering the country, so you'll get a glimpse into how flying in a tropical country during typhoon season can be risky business. We start out at the airport of Phu Quoc, basically the Hawaii of Vietnam, and we arrived 1.5 hours before departure, which was more than enough time, with about a 10-minute queue for bag drop-off and security only taking about 5 minutes. Obviously, it's just a small tropical island airport and handled just over 4 million passengers last year, so there isn't much to do here, but it's efficient and still has a few shops, restaurants and even a lounge. Also, I'm just mentioning this because it seems so random, but you can get direct flights from here to Prague, a few places in Central Asia, and Belavia, the national airline of Belarus, are even starting direct flights in the next few months, which was just so unexpected to me. And they also have a Starbucks and a Burger King, so fast food fans can rest easy. And after resisting the urge to buy the Naruto burger combo box, we headed to the gate. And as you can see, plenty of seating, lots of natural light, so quite a good airport overall. Whilst waiting, I spotted this Vietjet airplane, and my one word of advice for people visiting Vietnam is avoid Vietjet at all costs. You can find my review in the description below. Don't be tempted by their cheap prices, which are only slightly cheaper in any case. Anyway, our plane arrived about 30 minutes late, the reason being, on this day, the 26th of August, there was a giant typhoon hitting just south of Hanoi, so quite a few flights were heavily delayed, and there isn't much an airline can do when the airport is literally flooding. And as you'll see later, we ended up circling Hanoi for about an hour waiting for a break in the weather. But ultimately, that's just a risky take when flying in the rainy season, so I don't hold it against Vietnam Airlines today. Now here's the route map for today's flight, basically just heading straight north with frequent bouts of turbulence throughout the flight. And as you can see from the flight radar path, we took quite a roundabout route to get around the weather, arriving about an hour late in Hanoi. And here's the weather map for just a bit more context. If you didn't know, Hanoi is right in the centre here. Also, how groovy is this boarding music? They have 4 rows of business class up front, very similar to what you'll see in US first class, then the rest are just typical economy seats in a free layout. And whilst the business seats are kind of a sicky green-brown colour, the economy seats are a much more pleasant blue. So here is the seat, and as you can see, the legroom is really good for a short-haul plane. And sorry about the close-up on my hairy legs, but Vietnam is very hot. Anyway, the seats do look pretty retro, but in this case it's actually an advantage. They're so plush and comfy, and I really appreciate when you compare them to many other airlines who are increasingly making their seats thinner, with as much comfort as a wooden bench. The only thing missing is an adjustable headrest and a USB port too, I guess. You can also connect to their in-flight Wi-Fi for some entertainment options and an in-flight map, which I'll show later in the video. Another fun thing to note about this flight is that it was just a few days before Vietnam's 80th anniversary since their declaration of independence.
In the celebration of the 80th anniversary of our national day, Vietnam Airlines, we are to accommodate and serve you. Thank you once again for flying with us.
So that meant flags everywhere, and once in Hanoi I actually got to see the practice for their big parade. So here are a few clips from that. A pretty cool experience, and only mildly inconvenient as it meant the whole city centre was closed off and filled with tanks. Back in the cabin though, there's an in-flight magazine with a few interesting tourist pieces in both Vietnamese and English, and they even had a whole section about how great Perth is, which I found amusing. They also hand out a little wet wipe for can before takeoff, and soon we started pushing back and the safety video started playing, so here's that. I like that they've added a lot of cultural elements to it, but I miss the old one they had a few years ago, which if you haven't seen before, is one of my favourite safety videos of all time. Look it up on YouTube.
Your belongings in case of emergency evacuation. In the cabin, there are 8 exits, 2 at the front, 4 at the middle, and 2 at the rear. The exit lights thank you very much for your attention, and we wish you a pleasant flight.
So that's the safety video, and next is just a short taxi to the runway, with the takeoff coming up next. Now I didn't catch it on film, but this flight had some pretty frequent bouts of turbulence. But I guess you can kind of tell from the cloud formations, very tropical looking. A small meal service started shortly after takeoff, and it was just a cup of water and banana bread. On an international flight this length, Vietnam Airlines would actually serve a full meal, but since this was just a domestic flight, you just get a light snack. Even though due to all the circling we did, this flight became 2.5 hours long. Now it's time for the loo review, and I'm really starting to think I should just stop doing these as they're always the same. So maybe leave a comment if you get any value out of the loo review, otherwise I'll just scrap it. Unless it's a really noteworthy loo, which are few and far between. Now a nice change since the last time I flew Vietnam Airlines in 2023 is that they now have in-flight Wi-Fi. You can only use it to browse their entertainment site, but it's better than nothing, and there's a selection of movies, TV, music, and podcasts. Though it is mostly Vietnamese with a few other Asian countries mixed in, not many Western options at all, unsurprising for a Vietnamese airline. But I do like that it gives you real-time flight info and has a moving map. Anyway, we circled for a while, making the flight take almost an hour longer than it usually would, and as you can see from the landing footage, some pretty dramatic scenery with flooded fields and dark clouds. It was basically like this the whole 45 minutes approach as we threaded a path between the clouds, plus it was pouring with rain when we landed, so overall quite an exciting tropical experience. As we finally arrive at the bus gate, I also haven't mentioned the price yet, which is shockingly cheap. Only £54 or 1.9 million Vietnamese dong, and that included checked luggage, a large cabin bag, and free seat selection. And I'm pretty sure that's cheaper than Vietjet would be once you pay for all the extras. And speaking of Vietjet, the plane I spotted at Phu Quoc earlier in the video, it was also supposed to be heading to Hanoi at around the same time as us, but it actually got cancelled instead. Yet another reason I'll never fly Vietjet again. Also, I forgot to mention earlier, my previous flight with Vietnam Airlines was also delayed by about an hour due to weather, and despite the relatively small delay, they actually brought a drinks cart to the gate and served drinks to everyone. And I don't think I've ever seen another airline do that. For a 3-hour delay, then sure, some would, but not if it's just 1 hour. So really, my main takeaway from this flight, and in fact my whole holiday to Vietnam, is that if you're flying in the rainy season, then expect delays and chaos. And you should definitely bring an umbrella too. Very lastly, before I give my final score, finding a grab into Hanoi was also an absolute nightmare in this weather and we got soaked, so be warned. Now here's my final score, a pretty good flight and another good experience with Vietnam Airlines, despite what Mother Nature tried to throw at us. And I still think Vietnam Airlines have one of the comfiest economy seats in the sky, even if it does give off retro vibes. So thanks to that, they keep their 7 out of 10 ranking on my airline tier list, comparable, at least in my eyes, to British Airways and Turkish Airlines. Now next week I'll be reviewing a flight with China Eastern to Shanghai with a very pleasant departure time of 2 AM in the morning. So stay tuned for that and much more. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and goodbye.